This is the 2014 Eastside SetNet presentation for the Alaska Board of Fisheries. In this presentation, we will explain the following. First, we will explain who we are as Eastside SetNetters and the role we play in the Upper Cook Inlet fishery. Then, we will look at the importance of sockeye in the Upper Cook Inlet. After, we will discuss the impact of the personal use and the in-river sport fisheries. Later, we will show the management issues concerning the Eastside SetNet fishery. And lastly, we will take a look at the value of adaptive management. As Eastside SetNetters, we are what we do. We're fathers and mothers, we're grandparents, we're children, sons and daughters. We are families. We are families that work together. We are a community filled with generations of setnetting families. We are an important part of the local history here, and setnetting is not just a job to us. Setnetting defines us. It is who we are. For over 100 years, generations of our families have successfully fed the world a natural and nutritious protein. And in a world that is becoming more and more aware of the need to protect our earth, we are really proud that our harvest is sustainable. Because of purposeful planning by Alaska Department Fish and Game, future generations will be able to continue to feed the world this amazing and sustainable protein. As Eastside SetNetters, we are rooted in the local history of this fishery. Because for generations we have returned to the same beaches and have continued to fish the same way our forefathers have. Our fishing methods have changed very little over the past 135 years, and it is our goal to continue this rich history that is vital to our community. Beyond the cultural and historical importance of our fishery, we play a valuable role in the Alaska economy. It is estimated that the total processed product value, which is the wholesale value, of Cook Inlet set and drift net salmon in 2011 exceeded $94 million. Sockeye are the predominant species harvested in the Cook Inlet, accounting for 78% of landings between 1980 and 2011. Over that same period, sockeye accounted for 88% of the more than $2 billion total in revenues in 2012 dollars. In 2011, it is estimated that the Cook Inlet, drift net, and set net fisheries combined generated a total of $31.3 million in labor income alone. In 2010 and 2011, Cook Inlet ranked 4th among the Alaska major salmon fisheries. So we can conclude from these statistics gathered from the Northern Economics Economic Analysis that the Eastside SetNet fishery is indeed a valuable asset to the state of Alaska. The sockeye salmon is truly the heart of the Cook Inlet. Alaskan families depend on a healthy annual return of sockeye to feed their families. Our local economy runs off the summer activity related to the sockeye run. As each summer the population swells when anglers, dip netters, and commercial fishermen come to harvest a part of the sockeye salmon run, all the while spending money in the local economy. 84% of Eastside SetNet permit holders are owned by Alaska residents who are here supporting businesses, paying taxes, and looking after the best interests of the community throughout the year. The success of our local businesses and our community as a whole is critically bound to a healthy sockeye return. When looking at the management of the Upper Cook Inlet fisheries, it is important to understand the following escapement goals. First, the SEG, which is the Sustainable Escapement Goal. This is an estimate based on historical performance and other factors. An SEG is meant to conserve stocks over a 5 to 10 year period. It is used in situations where a biological escapement goal cannot be estimated because there is no stock-specific catch information. The Sustainable Escapement Goal is the primary management objective for the escapement. The SEG is used unless an optimal escapement, OEG, or in-river goal has been adopted by the Board of Fisheries. An SEG is developed by the Alaska Department of Fish and Game using biological data. The SEG are the spawners that escape to the spawning grounds. Next is the Optimum Escapement Goal, otherwise known as the OEG. The Optimum Escapement Goal allows for sustainable runs based on biological needs of the stock and ensures healthy returns for all user groups. The Optimum Escapement Goals are set by the Board of Fish. An Optimum Escapement Goal is a management objective that considers biological and allocative factors. The OEG are the spawners that escape to the spawning grounds. Next is the in-river goal. The in-river goal is a specific management objective for salmon stocks that are subject to harvest upstream of where the escapement is estimated. The in-river run goal will be set in regulation by the Board of Fisheries and is comprised of the sustainable escapement goal, the biological escapement goal, or the optimal escapement goal, plus specific allocations to in-river fisheries. Now, with these escapement goals in mind, let's take a look at the Kenai River sockeye goals. The Kenai River has a sustainable escapement goal of 700,000 to 1.2 million spawners, and in 2011, the Board of Fish created an optimum escapements goal of 700,000 to 1.4 million spawners. The in-river goals are set up with a three-tier system. Please note that the in-river sport harvest is unlimited below the counter for personal use in sport fishing, whereas the in-river sport fish allocation that is built into the in-river gold tier system is for sport fishing above the mile 19 sonar counter. When there are runs of 2.3 million or less, the in-river goal will be 900,000 to 1.1 million. In this situation, 200,000 to 400,000 sockeye are allocated to in-river, and east side set netters may have up to 24 hours of emergency order time. In runs of 2.3 million to 4.6 million, the in-river goal would be 1 million to 1.2 million. This allocates 300,000 to 500,000 sockeye to in-river and allows each side set netters 51 hours of emergency order time. In runs greater than 4.6 million, the in-river goal would be 1.1 million to 1.35 million. This allocates 400,000 to 650,000 sockeye to in-river and allows east side set netters up to 84 hours of emergency order time. This here is a graph of the Kenai River sockeye salmon spawning escapements. As you can see, the last 10-year average of spawners is 1,259,160. Let's look why this should concern us. What Kenai sockeye salmon yields do we want? Spawning escapements of 1.2 million will have a future yield of 2 million. Kenai sockeye are a salmon stock that the majority of Alaskans depend on. With a spawning escapement of 1.2 million, we will have a future yield of 2 million. With a 2 million return, that means that 1 million goes to escapement, and personal use in sport fish harvest is nearing 1 million. So what is left for the commercial fishery? With these numbers, it appears that the commercial fishery is being allocated out. Now let's look at the harvest rates for the Kenai River sockeye. In a 12-hour period, east side set netters harvest 70% of the available sockeye, whereas drifters harvest 40% and dip netters harvest 30%. So when managing for escapement goals, east side set netters are a very important tool with an efficient harvest rate of 70% of available sockeye, which makes fishing on abundance very important. Here are the Kasilof River sockeye goals. In the Kasilof River, the biological escapement goal is 160,000 to 340,000. The optimum escapement goal is 160,000 to 390,000. This goes into effect only to meet the minimum Kenai River sockeye goal. The 11-year average in the Kasilof is 364,790, which exceeds the maximum biological escapement goal range of 160,000 to 340,000, which will once again lead to reduced future yields. Now we will look at the impact and exponential growth of the Kenai River's in-river sockeye and personal use fisheries. Have the sockeye needs of the in-river fisheries been met? Yes. The 10-year average of the Kenai River total in-river run is 1,917,383 fish. The needs of the in-river fisheries have clearly been met. The in-river sockeye harvest is at its highest point, and they have yet to harvest what has been allocated by the Board of Fish. We will now take a look at the personal use fishery, also known as the dip net fishery. The Kenai River supports the largest unlimited dip net fishery in all of the state. And as the City of Kenai has stated in its 2013 DipNet report, without some limitation on this fishery, the mouth of this precious river is at maximum capacity. Since the creation of this fishery and its 14,576 permits, it has now increased to 135%, at an all-time high of 34,515 in 2011. It should be noted that out of these numbers, 82.73% of participants were not from the Kenai Peninsula zip code. From 2009 to 2012, the average harvest from the personal use fishery was 448,575. Since the creation of this fishery, the harvest has increased 149%. This is the run timing for the sockeye run for the Kenai River. The green marks the weekends in July. In 2013 was the first year where the pulse of sockeye did not hit on a weekend, which limited the harvest for the participants that came from the valley and Anchorage. Please note that the largest pulse of sockeye entering the Kenai River in 2013 occurred after a regular fishing period for the Eastside Set Net fishery. As you can see from these charts, in 2010, 2011, and 2012, all the large pulses of sockeye hit on a weekend. Now we will switch gears from sockeye to Chinook and look at the late run Chinook on the Kenai River. In 2013, the Alaska Department of Fish and Game changed the late run Chinook goal from 15,000 to 30,000. This, however, did not lower the goal. It was simply adjusted for the counting method with the new Ditson sonar. In fact, on page 16, as shown here, the draft of the escapement goal report, the recommended goal of 15,000 to 30,000 provides a small safety factor to reduce risk to the Chinook salmon stock. Without the safety factor, the new sustainable escapement goal would be 12,000 to 28,000 with a 3,000 Chinook safety factor. This graph shows the late run Chinook spawning escapements. The Kenai River late run Chinook have met their escapement goals for the past 27 years and actually exceeded the upper goal for 19 years. There clearly is no conservation concern for the late run Chinook salmon. The average annual harvest rate on the Kenai River late run Chinook salmon for all user groups is 39%. Even if the Eastside set netters are closed for the entire season, only an additional 13% of the total return will enter the river. Other user groups represented include personal use, subsistence, commercial drift fleet, and sport fishermen, the majority being taken by the sport fish industry. This graph shows the late run Chinook yield. Changing the Kenai River late run Chinook to an optimum escapement goal of 20,000 to 40,000 would actually reduce future yields on this highly prized fish. Reduced future yields lead to reduced fishing opportunity for all users. Why would anyone want that? What restrictions do Eastside set netters have for Chinook conservation? The Eastside set net fishery has 2 regular fishing periods on Monday and Thursday. In the Kasilof district, this is from June 25th to August 15th. In the Kenai district, this is July 8th to August 15th. The Kenai district does not start until the first Monday or Thursday on or after July 8th for Chinook conservations, some years as late as July 11th. Then there is the emergency hour limitations. Regardless of what the sockeye are doing, Eastside set netters have limitation on their hours. By regulation, mesh on the Eastside set net gear must be 6 inches or smaller to maximize sockeye harvest and reduce Chinook harvest. Windows. These are specific closures for the sole purpose of moving fish into the river. During times of low Chinook abundance and Chinook restrictions, the in-river fishery shifts their focus to other salmon stocks, mainly sockeye. According to the Freshwater Guide logbooks, in 2011, 319 active Kenai River guides sold an average of 26 trips each. And in 2012, the year that the entire Eastside set net fishery was closed, 301 active Kenai River guides sold an average of 22 trips each. This was just one trip less per guide than in 2009. Although this graph reflects a small decrease in business, it is nothing in comparison to the loss of opportunity for the Eastside Setnet fishery in the last 2 years. Guides have other opportunity to sustain their business. In recent years of low abundance of Chinook returning to the Kenai River, the Eastside Setnetters have experienced significant reduction in fishing opportunity. This graph shows the impact of restrictions to the Eastside Setnetters by comparing the total fishing time available for the current management tier to the actual time fished. Eastside Setnetters have shouldered the burden of conservation. When fishing restrictions are put into place, the in-river users have the ability to create other fishing opportunity by either fishing different species, using different harvest methods, or fishing in different drainages. When the Eastside Setnetters are met with the very same restrictions, they have no other opportunity, meaning they are left with no other choice but to sit idle on the beach. There are often times when the optimum escapement goal for both the Chinook and the sockeye runs cannot be met, and that is why the trade-off discussion must be carefully considered. One must ask themselves this question: which do more Alaskan residents benefit from, the harvestable surplus of Chinook or the harvestable surplus of sockeye? Consider the following. Chinook runs benefit the sport fishing industry. There are both guides and private anglers, and of course, there is economic gain to the local businesses associated with the sport fishing industry. Whereas the beneficiaries of the sockeye fishery include 100,000 Alaskan residents who fish for sockeye in the personal use fishery, native tribes who harvest sockeye in the subsistence fishery. Then there is the commercial fishery, where 1,305 permits are held and 5,000 jobs are created. Under the umbrella of that commercial fishery are 19 major processors and buyers. There are also numerous sport fishermen, both guides and private anglers, who fish for sockeye. And of course, there are all the local businesses that depend on the business of the commercial fishermen and tourists associated with the sockeye fishery. In conclusion, the trade-off is clear. Far more Alaskan residents benefit from a healthy sockeye run than that of a Chinook run. The following chart represents a summary of the Eastside Setnet fishery past regulatory losses. Each regulation resulted in a reduced harvest opportunity for the Eastside Setnets. In 1974, the Russian River Run is designated Sport Fish Priority. Then in 1981, the Coho Run is also designated Sport Fish Priority. 3 years later, in 1984, the Kenai, Salamantoff, and East Foreland season is shortened by 5 days. In 1993, area registration for Upper Cook Inlet permits is put into place. In 1997, the Kenai, Salamantoff, and East Foreland seasons changes again in a loss of 10 days. In 1999, the Kenai River management tiers are adopted. In 2002, Eastside Setnetters were no longer allowed to fish 24-hour fishing periods from August 1st until August 7th. In 2005, August windows were eliminated. The 1% regulation was instituted, and windows were adopted into the Upper Cook Inlet Management Plan. In 2011, the Board of Fisheries increased the allocated sockeye to the personal use fishery by 33%. Windows were expanded to 36 hours. A floating 24-hour window and runs of 2.3 to 4.6 million was added. Beach nets were no longer allowed to be fished during the pink salmon openings. And lastly, the Kasilof section was coupled with the Kenai section after July 8th. So what do Eastside Setnetters want? Here is what we as Eastside Setnetters would like to see. First, that escapement goal management is managed for all stocks of all fish in the Upper Cook Inlet, regardless of political pressure. Second, opportunity and predictability for all user groups. Also, fair burden of conservation. We would like to see this shared among all user groups in close proportion to their historical respective harvest. Adaptive management. That means we would like to see the Department of Fish and Game giving the ability to change their fishing patterns based on in-season data and the best science and methods available. And lastly, the in-river habitat protection and assessment. As mentioned earlier, the Eastside Setnetters would like to see the Alaska Department of Fish and Game have more flexibility in their management. In Upper Cook Inlet, windows are mandatory. They are mandatory commercial fishing closures regardless of fish strength. Windows restrict managers' ability to fish on abundance with real-time decisions by forcing mandated daily and hourly closures. Windows increase Chinook harvest because managers are forced to fish when the calendar says, and not when the fish are in abundance. And lastly, windows are an implied guarantee of increased harvestable fish moving into rivers, which leads to high expectations of unrealistic harvest opportunity for in-river users. I think we would all agree that salmon look just fine on a calendar, but let's face it, they don't know how to read one. So how can we expect the salmon to enter the river on set days? We can't, and that is why we need to give the biologists with the most recent data the freedom to open and close the Eastside Setnet fishery as they see fit, in turn giving them more control to manage for the best health of our rivers. The Eastside Setnets fished a regular fish day on Monday, July 15, 2013. On this day, the total harvest of Chinook was less than 0.083% of the total Eastside Setnet harvest. 341,483 sockeye were harvested in a 16-hour period. 286 total Chinook were harvested, with only 191 of them being bound for the Kenai River. If this day would have fallen within a mandatory window, it would have resulted in foregone harvest and lost harvest opportunity for the Eastside Setnet fishery. The bottom line is windows do not work. Windows tie the hands of managers and prevent adaptive in-season management. In-season flexibility is essential to escapement goal management in this dynamic fishery. Handouts to this presentation are available, or it can be viewed online. We would now like to open this discussion up to questions and comments. Thank you for listening.